conceptual model for urban interventions in historic cities based on space syntax. The fast growth of urban centers with the concept of globalization has left the valuable historic urban cores to a state of abandonment and depreciation. The cultural life and city rhythm gets deeply affected as human displacement occurs through the inevitable processes of globalization and localization. Thus, one prefers to conclude that only progressive theories pertaining to culture and place can correlate the user preferences with the built environments in traditional context. So this research envisions the need of understanding spatial configuration of built environments regard their culture-specific human preferences to evolve an ideological concept integrating the cultural context and the spatial configuration of the city to address various development issues through physical and spatial synthesis of the city. So why space syntax? In order to quantify spatial relations of historic urban cores and the urban context, space syntax theory is introduced in the study. Space syntax is a set of techniques for the representation, quantification, interpretation of spatial configuration in settlements and buildings. It measures the relative accessibility of different locations by partitioning the spatial system into relatively independent but connected subspaces. The epistemological basis for the study, the primary measures which has taken as axial map, and the interpretation of each values has been given in the right hand side. So the global integration has been referred as a key measure of the axial map for the value which tells us how the line is positioned with respect to the system as a whole. And local integration will give you the most segregated space in the system. And the measure of choice gives you the highest choice value street, which is most crowded and lively street of the city. And measures of connectivity, where lower connectivity value is attributed to a non-orthogonal grid prevalent in naturally growing cities. And 10% of the integration core is the most integration line is an urban plan will represent the skeleton of the mental map, because those lines are the most familiar to people, means wherever you are in the system, you are never away from a higher integration line. And the normalized angular choice gives an experience suggests that the high values indicates general threshold for different types of activity to establish themselves in urban grids. And coming to the secondary parameters is actually the correlation of the primary parameter, where you measures of synergy shows how the global structure of an entire system is expressed in the local structure of space. And secondly, the measure of intelligibility allows the large-scale system to be learned without conscious efforts. And correlation between the choice and the integration gives you the potential for a co-presence between people undertaking different sorts of trips of different lengths. And the third one is the isovist map analysis, where you actually count the behavioral aspect of a citizen based on the area. Area gives you the ranking with the highest areas, the first rank, and the perimeter index providing a feeling of spaciousness, and drift will be more on narrow long streets, and occlusivity how far one can see, and compactness shows how enclosed the viewers feels in the environment. And talking about how the process starts for the culturally integrated quantitative model of urban morphology, if you take a case of a town, you take three components, like one is a street network, the second one is the urban artifact, and the third one is the cultural event. In street network, you measure the mean connectivity, global integration, local integration, normalized choice and control, which gives you inner synergy and intelligibility. And urban artifacts will be measured under global integration and local integration. And cultural events is measured based on isovist. You have cultural processions and cultural events. Again, you will count the area, perimeter, drift, occlusivity, and compactness. And all the combined together will be giving you the rank order correlation. And finally, you can conclude whether the specific urban core is culturally integrated or not. And as a conclusion, the three major parameters like global integration, the local integration, and the normalized angular choice could be the defining parameters for urban interventions. And moving on with the conceptual model, which is the final outcome of my research. And this conceptual model actually designed for two purposes. One is the case of an existing built environment where you can do the study, you can do the conservation, you can do the redevelopment. And second is the case where you can design a totally new built environment where the developing traditional urban core is still existing. These are the two cases where you can apply this particular model. And moving on with the model, you can start with the city. You find whether city is culturally significant and historically significant based on the measures of syntactic parameters. Get the integration values of cultural nodes and streets based on overlapping the cultural events and streets and activities, isobist and high syntactic values. And if you are introducing a new street or a new urban center, you are supposed to measure the syntactic parameters of the new streets and the nodes, and then get back to the existing street measures, which will become A1. Initially, it was A for the existing city. Once you introduced the B, the existing A value becomes A1. So they measure the syntactic parameters of the existing cultural streets and nodes after introducing the new system, and then compare with the syntactic values of the cultural centers. And if you get a value like B is lesser than A1 and A1 is greater or equal to A, you can proceed with the proposal. And if it is the other way around, you have to repeat the method so that the cultural integration of the core is not getting depreciated. This is how the model functions. For this sampling test, I have taken the cultural capital of Kerala, which is Thrissur Temple Town, which is rich with cultural events and festivals. And along with that, Thrissur Puram Kudamatam has been listed as the world's greatest darbar by UNESCO. And Thrissur Puram is already there in the world tourism calendar. Moving on with the Thrissur base map, this is how the central traditional core is. And you can see over here, 5 nodes have been identified and 20 artifacts and events have been listed for the study. And as a first case, the first case was finding out the integration of the core based on the characteristics of the 10% integration core. You can see the rating over here. This was the first step of the study to prove whether the center is culturally integrated, the core is culturally integrated. And second one is finding the morphological evolution, where you are proving it whether it is historically relevant as well. For that, I have taken a case from 1805 till 2022, which is covering over 215 years. And the first order syntactic parameters have been measured. And then the second order syntactic parameters have been measured. And these are the summaries of my findings. And then third stage is establishing the relationship between the culture precise space proxemics and the spatial configuration. For that, 4 cases have been taken. One is I've studied the 75 years of evolution, marking the 10% of the integration core. And secondly, again, 75 years of cases of street analysis based on the normalized angular choice and isobis visibility studied, and then correlating both have been coming with the ranking. And this is how it has been done, the first one. And the second one, role of historic cultural position with the present scenario. Previous was for the 200 years, and this is for the present scenario for the role of historic and cultural centers. And analysis of cultural streets were done. And lastly, the processions and the events have been analyzed based on the nodes with the isobist map. And it has been established as the cultural integrated with the spatial configuration. Correlation coefficient test has been done and conducted with the integrating ranking and isobis visibility ranking. And with this, you can prove that city is whether culturally integrated and historically relevant. With this, we start with modulation of test number 1, a case where B becomes greater than A1, which is a case where the cultural integrity of the core is getting deteriorated by adding a new street or a new core center. You can see over here, a new street has been added as an outer ring, and also an axial road has been added in the center. And again, the integration value has been measured where B becomes greater than A1, where B is the new introduced street or the node, and A1 is the existing culturally integrated street and the node, which means the cultural integrity of the city gets dying by adding the new street or the node. That is the case number 1. And test number 2 is the case where the B becomes lesser than A1, where the cultural integrity of the entire core is still getting remained after adding the new road as such. this is the case where a new heritage street connecting historic, cultural, religious centers of Thrissur round has been added. And in the end of the day, you can see that existing syntactic values has been improved, and along with that, new road is not taking over with the existing cultural road network. This is how the analysis of the model comes in the end. So these are the findings of the test number 2. And as a conclusion, a purely qualitative approach alone does not provide definite inputs and guidelines for urban design interventions. And these are my final conclusions. Thank you.
So, to conclude, you want to tell us that you introduced a street, the introduction of a street.
Yeah, I have derived a model in such a manner that you can modulate by adding a street or by adding a node or by adding a center there, and you can remeasure the existing street networks and existing nodes and activities by all the other measuring methods, so that the cultural integrity of those values of the historic code doesn't go down by adding the new system.
This is a fantastic solution to all the cities that are losing.
That's what, and it is already applying in many cities in US and UK. And I'm consulting, I'm giving my consultations to them as well for.
So in the Indian scenario,
Yeah.
this is doable?
It is possible, but it's an extensive study and modulation you have to do for doing this kind of a thing in our case, because we are with a lot of network which is organically developed.
So where is the model for that?
Which one? I didn't get you.
For your organic settlement that we have in India.
Yeah, I have done a case of Thrissur where it is closely knit, which I took 3 years. So it is possible.
So you have devised a formula to.
Yeah, I have devised a model so that it can be applied for any scenario. If for an example, if an investor or a developer.
No, but one size fits all will work?
Yeah, it works.
It works.
Yeah.
Right.
Thank you.